My name is Stephen Notley, and I'm here selling my Bob the Angry Flower books.
And what's the inspiration behind the flower books?
Just random, crazy comicery of all sorts. It's just sort of a platform for making jokes about everything from bad punctuation to fear of public speaking to vengeful geats to the structure of the hadron or stepping in poop or whatever. It's just a platform for wide spectrum general comedy. Like if it's an element of existence, I've almost certainly done an insightful and hilarious and likely baffling cartoon about it.
What's your favorite that you've done so far?
Oh man, that's a tough one. Unfortunately, it's my fourth book is out of print, and it has, I think, still my favorite work, which was like a 24-page story called Lovebot Conquers All, in which this sort of robot built by Bob, who's programmed to love, sort of goes out and kind of ends up in this sort of Archie situation, like he's sort of. There's like a Betty and a Veronica and a Jughead kind of guy, and then Lovebot, and then like Dick Cheney's Heart, which is sort of this twisted little creature that runs around with a knife killing people. And it was just a ball to write and just do all these sort of like gags and action sequences and all the pacing, and I think it's my best work.
And how's your experience been at Comic-Con so far?
It's pretty good. It's pretty good. My experience is typically very, very closely tied to the level of sales. So they've been pretty good. Yesterday was not too bad, and I'm hoping today is okay.
And have you been to Comic-Cons before?
Oh yes.
How does this compare?
Pardon?
How does this one compare?
It's pretty good. It's pretty typical. I mean, Comic-Cons generally they're getting bigger. Though I mean, it was like 2 or 3 years ago. It was really like about to burst, like a sausage on a campfire left too long or something, and I think they've sort of taken steps to control that a little bit, which is probably just as well. So it's not quite as like insanely crowded and insanely like about to pop the way that it has been, which is it's good. It's nice that you can actually sort of walk around a little bit and you're not absolutely assaulted by the stench of like 150,000 people.
Do you have any horror stories from either this year or previous?
Horror stories. No, usually I'm the horror story. Like most of the stories about sort of revolve around me like insulting some sort of comics luminary. Like when I met Keith Knight, for example, Keith Knight of the K Chronicles, The Nightlife, and Think. That was the year that the X-Men movie first came out, and there was the Bryan Singer panel, and there was 3,000 people in the room, and everyone was adoring him and saying how awesome the movie was, and I was like, okay, can we get one more question? Can we get a final question? So I put up my hand, and then I was like, so I really like the way that the movie was sort of set in this very real-seeming universe. You really kind of tried to ground it, except for all the scenes in Canada. Like, why was it winter in Canada when it was summer everywhere else? And all these, bear pelts hanging on the roof. And as I was asking this question, I suddenly realized, oh my God, I'm that guy asking that ass question. And I just sort of dribbled off, and he made sort of a game attempt to answer the question. And then they were like, can we get another final question? And I was just so appalled and ashamed. I just wanted to stand at the door and just apologize to everyone as they walked out. I'm sorry for that question. But then I just met Keith, and when I ran into him and told him this story, he was like, "Oh my God, that was awesome!" He went around saying "This is the guy that took on Bryan Singer." So that's, as I say, I tend to be the source of the horror in most of the horror stories that abound.
And then, lastly, what's your favorite comic?
My favorite comic?
Or one of your favorites?
That's a toughie.
It's kind of an impossible question.
The K Chronicles by Keith Knight.